Welcome everyone to the Naked Founder Podcast, a business podcast where nothing is hidden. This episode of the Naked Founder Podcast is sponsored by Financial, the home of money for women. Our guest today is Sam White, founder and CEO of Stella Insurance. Big welcome to you, Sam.
Thank you for having me on.
No, delighted. Sam, we always start each episode of the Naked Founder Podcast with the same question. What didn't they tell you about founding a business that you wish you'd known at the beginning?
Well, I was only 24, so people hadn't told me anything at all. Yeah. And I might not have done it if I'd known it all. I think, the biggest thing is probably just because you can doesn't mean that you should. So as a 24-year-old, and probably for many, many years, I have the enthusiasm of a founder, which means I love starting things. I do genuinely believe that anything is possible, and my life has taught me that to be true. I've had lots of adventures and experiences and built lots of stuff. But I think, one of the big lessons that you learn is that it is as important to know what not to do as what to do.
It's really clever point as well, is that it's very easy. Sometimes the best decision you make is the one where you decide not to do anything at all.
Yes.
If somebody had told you when you were 24 what to do, would you have listened to them?
No.
Right, Sam, you've spoken before about this next area, and you're fine talking about it. You come from quite a dysfunctional family. Your mum was an entrepreneur herself, but had a problem with alcohol, which has shaped your view on life and certainly your relationship with alcohol. You largely raised yourself. Can you tell us a bit about your childhood and how that shaped the person you are today?
Yeah, and look, in a lot of ways, I am actually very grateful for my childhood, which some people find a bit shocking when they are aware of the intimate details. But yes, my mum was a brilliant entrepreneur, but unfortunately when her parents died, she ended up leaning on alcohol way too much, and she ended up with a problem with alcohol, which meant that as a child, I wasn't really parented. My dad worked import-export, so he was out of the country a lot, and my mum wasn't really in a fit state to look after children. And so I kind of found my own way through life. And I actually think most entrepreneurs that I meet have similar stories. I don't know about you, but I find that when you really get into conversations with very successful people, there's normally some kind of dysfunction or trauma that they've gone through. And what that does breed is resilience, and it breeds a reliance on yourself in a way that a lot of people that have been brought up in incredibly safe environments don't have. So, friends of mine that take safe, what I would consider to be middle-class jobs as accountants or teachers or, things that are predictable with a career path and a salary, generally have a belief that the world has some kind of structure and will protect you in some kind of way. And I don't think I had that bred into me. And so the alternative to that is you've got to make it happen for yourself. You have to find a way to make it work.
Stephen Bartlett talks about that. He was the youngest of 4 children. There was a bit of a gap between him and his the third sibling as well. So he largely brought himself up as well. But he said that taught him a lot about entrepreneurship, and it taught him a lot about business. And life could have gone one of two ways, and thankfully it went the right way as well. But it probably wouldn't have happened if he'd come from what you might consider to be a fairly straightforward upbringing. You've always been entrepreneurial. As a teenager, you used to wash cars, as did Lisa Morton, actually. She also used to wash cars when she was a teenager. At the age of 24, you launched a claims business called Action 365 from your sister's Conservatory, no less. I think you grew it to 220 people. Were riding on that wave, everyone looked up to you, and then the business went into administration as well. So you saw both sides of the coin with that business. What are your key lessons from that experience?
Yeah, look, so I grew the business to over 20 million in turnover, 3-4 million EBIT, and I just kept growing. And there wasn't ever, for me, any reason not to do that. I was having fun. I was building stuff. Everything that I was starting or creating generated, revenue and then profit. So you can get to a point where you believe that things will always just keep happening. And I think to my point earlier, I didn't really spend much time looking at key risks that could destabilize the business, because my response was always just build something more, grow it further, and that will stabilize. So I learned that anything is possible. Like I ended up living in Beverly Hills at one point for a couple of years. I had more money than I could have ever imagined as a 24-year-old starting out in my sister's conservatory. But I think that the biggest lesson for me that I have learned is that if you don't have a plan to exit, and everybody always used to say this to me when I was younger, they'd be like, what's your exit plan? I used to think it was a stupid question. I was like, why would I want to exit? I'm having fun. But actually, the purpose of business is to build something up, create value, and then sell it to a large degree if you're talking about it from just a commercial viewpoint. And I don't think I fully got that until much more recently. And when you are capable of building things, if you start from a position of what does this look like at the end, you can continue, you can build something up. Like a number of the businesses that I could have sold and then started again with something new. Like you don't have to keep the same business for 25 years. You can build lots of different businesses, create value and move forward.
But that's the thing, actually. I think people's timelines have changed. The idea that you'd start a business and that's a business you'd retire in. It's like starting a job. You stay in that job for life. Now people have got 3 jobs at the same time and have got 6 careers. In your 20s, and it's hard to believe now, in your 20s you had a real problem with anxiety attacks. You used to have as many as 4 or 5 a day. So can you explain how they manifested themselves and what the cause was?
Yeah. So look, even in my 20s, I've always been quite a strong character, and I've always been able to make my own way in the world. So when I started getting panic attacks, it was really destabilizing. And I think people think.
What did they look like? Panic attacks.
So the first one I had just caught me completely out of the blue, like wasn't expecting it at all. And the feeling that you get is that you can't breathe. So your immediate assumption is that you're dying, right? And the sensation of a panic attack is absolute terror, like the kind of terror that you have never experienced. Like I'm generally not frightened. Scary movies don't frighten me. Roller coasters don't frighten me. But this feeling was just abject terror and an absolute belief that I was about to die. So the first time I got it, I was in Greece. I was away with a boyfriend at the time. We weren't doing anything particularly exciting. I think we were having dinner, and this panic attack hit. And I think, one of the challenges with panic attacks is they are your nervous system trying to give you a bit of a warning flag that it's not happy. The more I've learned about them, it's about your ability to process your emotions, manage your kind of all the stuff that you need to be dealing with on a general basis, but most people kind of park or push away. And it's deeply unsettling and overwhelming. But for me, it taught me how to manage my emotions. It taught me how to manage myself and take care of myself in a way that, again, I think, unfortunately, the best lessons that you learn in life sometimes are the hardest things that you have to go through. So I wouldn't wish them on anybody, but if you can navigate your way through them, what you get at the end of it is a very stable, robust.
Did you know what caused it?
System. Probably the childhood trauma, to be fair. I went through quite a lot from the ages of 7 to 23. My mum overdosed when I was 23, and I think you store stuff up, like, so you just kind of keep going and kind of push yourself through things. But what you're capable of dealing with cognitively and what your nervous system is prepared to tolerate are 2 entirely different things. And I think a lot of founders are the sort of people that will just keep pushing through stuff regardless of warning signals or signs that maybe they need to do something slightly different.
You mentioned you were in Greece when you had your first panic attack and you were with a boyfriend at the time. At the age of 30, you came out as gay after 2 long-term relationships with men. It wasn't the same time then as it is now. Was that a difficult decision for you to make and talk about it publicly?
No, it wasn't. And I always feel a bit conflicted in this regard, because I know it is really hard for a lot of people to come out. And I know a lot of people do suffer with prejudice as a result of their sexuality or, other factors that are outside of their control. But I didn't. I don't think I invited too much discussion around it, because for me this was something about me that uniquely affected me. And so it didn't really occur to me that anybody would be able to have a view on this. Like, why would you care, type thing. And I think because I was so nonplussed about it, I probably didn't get the kind of reaction. People tend to look for weaknesses in others. If they are ill-minded towards you, they're going to look for a chink in your armor. So as a kid, if you're uncomfortable about some factor about yourself, then the other kids are likely to kind of focus in on that. And I think because I was that bit older and probably a little bit more settled in my own skin, there wasn't really a space for people to do that.
What did you have a feeling before coming out at the age of 30 that you might be gay?
Look, my relationship with men was very good. Like, I had a great relationship with my dad. He worked very hard when I was younger and he was away a lot, but our actual sort of base relationship was good. He was a kind guy. He was emotionally intelligent. So I've always had good relationships with men. So I wasn't in relationships with guys and thinking, I should be with a woman. I think the first woman I was attracted to was probably 23. So it wasn't something in my teenage years that had really occurred to me. And for me, I'm the sort of person, I'm quite open and curious generally. So when I first realized that I was attracted to a woman, it wasn't like, oh my God, this is awful. I was just like, oh, that's interesting. And then, I started to realize that the intensity of the attraction and the emotional connection that I was having with women was much greater than, so the guys, it was easy, and it is a lot easier. I always laugh. It's easier dating men than dating women, no question. But I liked the complexity. I liked the depth of connection. And so once I'd made that choice, it wasn't really something that I was ever going to come back from.
Okay, so we're going to go from coming out to setting up Stella.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's a seamless link there somewhere. You launched Stella in the UK in 2022. You actually set it up first in Australia. It's a female-centric motor insurance business. So just tell us what the approach was to Stella when you started it.
Yeah, so, I went over to Australia. We were talking about this earlier. Completely fell in love with the country. It is a fabulous country. It's filled with opportunity, energy, positivity. And I went over just with a bit of curiosity about whether there might be some stuff that I could do over there. And I met with some senior insurance businesses. We ended up doing some projects. I did some claims projects, which was my background. It's what I understood. And then I met this fabulous CEO of one of the biggest insurance companies in Australia. And he was really keen for me to set up an insurance business. And I didn't want to. I'm not particularly passionate about insurance for insurance sake. I'm passionate about lots of things, supporting female entrepreneurs. I'm passionate about creating businesses and, trying to create businesses that are good for the community that they operate in. But insurance in of itself is, is not the thing. So when he asked me if I'd set up a business in insurance, at first I was like, not a chance, I'm not doing it, John. And he said, why not? And I said, well, because it doesn't really light me up in that way. And he said, well, what does? And I said, honestly, I'm passionate about supporting women and supporting female entrepreneurship. And he said, well, couldn't you bring those two things together? And I said, well, that is interesting. If I could create a financial service brand that was specifically focused on women and designing products around them, but standing for something, that would excite me. And he said, well, do that then. And so I was like, all right, then I will.
Good old John. You started Stella in Australia. You opened up in the UK. How big is the Stella group now?
Yeah, so in Australia, we'll do around 26 million in premium this year.
Australian dollars.
Australian dollars. Yeah. In the UK, we should do around 60 million pounds.
606 or 16?
60 million pounds of premium in the UK. We've got probably about 70,000 customers in the UK and around 12,000 in Australia.
Right. Okay. So, and number of staff that you employ?
So Australia is more of a tech business. So we've developed our own policy administration system. So we build all of our products on it from scratch. The idea there is to make it as efficient as possible. And obviously to be able to utilise the new technology that's coming down the pipes as much as possible. So the Australian business employs around 12 people at the moment. We're recruiting for another 3, and the UK has 35.
Okay. One of the fascinating things about this podcast, and people listening to it or watching it will think to themselves, what an accomplished, confident speaker Sam is. But the truth is that for a long period of time, it might even still be the case, he used to hate public speaking. How did you overcome that fear?
Yeah, I hated public speaking. And again, I had a coach who was working with me, and you say, oh, you're very confident in meetings and putting deals together and blah, blah, blah. But I've not seen you like present in front of the staff. You seem to leave that to other people in the business to do. And I said, well, yeah, that's deliberate. I don't like it. And he said, oh, that's interesting. Why don't you like it? And I said, it's something that I'm deeply uncomfortable with, don't want to do it. And he said, but the people that are talking on your behalf are not talking, you're losing your voice, because how they would articulate the situation or the vision statement or the mission is not the same as you. And so you are passing that power to them by not doing it yourself. This is something that you've just got to kind of get over, Sam. And, I went away and I read some things. I mean, there's a lot of extremely successful business people that also struggled. I think, Steve Jobs didn't like publicly speaking and had to kind of tear himself through it quite a lot. And I kind of realised that it was one of those things that if I didn't get a handle on it, it would hold me back. And so you say, how do you get over it? I actually hired a speaking coach and did the boring stuff. Like everything in life, you want to learn how to do something. You will never just go into it and be fantastic at it. So I hired a coach, and then you get to a certain point where the only thing you can really do is force yourself to actually do it. And so I signed up for some keynote speaking gigs and just forced myself to do it.
I mean, you're on BBC Radio 4, Sky News, BBC Radio 5 Live, Wake Up to Money, various publications actually that you've spoken on before. You made a concerted effort, I think, at the start of your career to really raise your profile on LinkedIn as well. Free resource. I mean, that's something other founders should do if they want to. Yeah, people say to themselves, hey, how did that Sam White get on Sky News? Or how did it get on BBC Radio 5 Live, Wake Up to Money? Raise your profile. Use the assets that are free and at your disposal. Would that be fair?
Totally. I think the other thing, though, as well, is being brave. So there's a lot of noise on social media, and it's easy for people to just blend. Like a lot of people are using AI now to write their posts, which will mean that you haven't got any. I mean, I use AI to sort out my spelling and grammar, which is frankly diabolical. But I always write my own stuff. And I think, there are things that you will care about deeply that will resonate with other people. And when you speak from that place where you talk authentically about things that you care about, other people respond to that because they can feel your authenticity and your passion. Whereas if you're frightened to say something that you think might be a bit controversial or that other people might not relate to, you run the risk of just becoming so generic that nobody notices you.
You've spoken very authentic. You've spoken about using coaches. You just mentioned it earlier. You also spoken about using therapists as well. What's been your experience of those two professionals?
So, I like the gym. We talked about that as well.
You've lost 6 stone. You've lost 6 stone, and for the benefit of the people who are listening to this podcast, you've got a sleeveless T-shirt on, showing your guns off. Okay.
The sun is out.
The sun is out. The sun is out. The sun is shining in Manchester. But yeah, you've used therapists and coaches before. I mean, has that been a good thing?
Yeah, look, this is, if you want to grow as a human being, the idea that you can do that without any help from anybody else is frankly ludicrous. And, I had a conversation with a friend of mine that said, well, I'd never go to a therapist. That's what my friends are for. Like, I can just talk to my friends. And I said, that's great, but your friends will never actually tell you the truth. And he said, what do you mean? I'm very honest with my friends. And I said, no, I'm sure that you and your friends feel that they can disclose honestly. But the reality is your friends want to still be your friends. And so there will be many people in your life that you have thoughts about where you go, oh my God, he's doing that thing again. It's a disastrous relationship, or, he drinks too much and he keeps telling me he's giving up or he's cutting down. But you're not going to tell them that the majority of the time.
You've just summed up my life there.
You don't tell them because you want to stay friends, right?
Yeah.
So for me...
I do. I do. I haven't got a filter. I'm not very happy with my relationship. But, I do. I think if somebody asks me a question and they ask me for my advice, not that many people do, why would they? As a friend, I think the worst thing to do is not to say what you really want to say. But you're right. You're too worried about losing that relationship. So you go to a third party who's not got any skin in the game as well. And do you still use therapists?
I would do. I'm not currently in therapy. When my dad died, I went back for a few months because I wanted extra help processing grief. And, I think for me, there's always more to learn. So, and I have to be ready to learn it. It's the same as business. It doesn't matter how much success you get or, failures that you deal with. There'll be a learning stage, a growth stage. And then if you want to punch through that, you need to do things differently, and you need to reflect. You need to look at what has happened and what you've done so far and go, am I exactly where I want to be? Am I having the life that I want to have, having, the feelings on a day-to-day basis that I want to have? And if the answer isn't 100% yes, then there's more work to be done, and, you just got to do the work.
If you, if you mentioned earlier that, I think your weight, there was an article in the national press that said that I think your highest amount, your weight was, or your size was 24. Is that right?
That is correct, yeah.
Yeah, and you lost 6 stone since then. I think you work out at the gym every day. And, I can vouch for that as well. In 2022, you took the decision to stop drinking alcohol. Now, you mentioned your mum at the start of the podcast as well. What was the reason behind that decision? Was it driven by what happened to your mum?
So I think, I can't ignore the effect that alcohol has had on my life. And, alcohol is generally sort of rolled out as this wonderful thing that makes everybody have so much fun and enjoyment. And that's true sometimes. What's also true is it can wreak absolute havoc. So for me, alcohol was something that had robbed me of, a mother figure as a child. Ultimately kind of killed her off. And so I think I always had a bit of a nervous relationship with alcohol. So, when I drank, which I did, I always had in the back of my mind, like, at what level did my mum's drinking tip from like a heavy drinker to a problem drinker to an alcoholic? So I was always conscious of that. So I used to...
That spoils having those thoughts, and I can understand that, having those thoughts. So it takes away from the actual enjoyment of drinking, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think it does, because I think if you're second guessing it, if that thought is in your head, then it is going to impact just the idea, oh, well, I'm just having a few drinks and I'm having fun. I think also, though, for me, as I got older, it's the law of diminishing returns. So for me, anything in life, is it adding to my life or taking away? And that's true of activities that I might have, friendships I might have, relationships I might have, and substances that you might use. So I smoked until I was 30. And, same thing. I woke up one day, I was like, what am I doing? This is completely pointless. It's just poisoning me and making me feel bad. And I gave up and I never touched them again. And then with alcohol, I sort of went through, I said I was sober curious for a number of years. So when I was in LA, I didn't drink for a year. It's a lot easier. People in Los Angeles aren't as obsessed with alcohol as we are in the UK. Just before COVID, I had another break for, I think it was a year and a half where I didn't drink. And then there'd be a set circumstance, like a celebration or whatever. And I think, why? And then for months, I'd just drink really lightly. And when I'd have a couple of big nights, feel terrible. And I think, like, again, why am I doing this? What is it that I think I'm getting out of it?
You've got 2 young children as well.
Yes.
And I think that really focuses the mind as well. Going back to the early stages in your career, unfortunately, you did suffer a lot of misogyny and sexism as well. How bad did it get?
I mean, look, I think I'm 50 now. So a lot of the stuff, you almost forget it and you move past it, and it is just the way that it is. But when I was building the business initially, I started it from my sister's conservatory, and then we bought this semi-detached house together, and we turned the basements into offices, and it was growing and it was doing well. And I got approached by a business guy who had a business that wanted the work from us. So we were generating a certain volume of work, and he wanted us to generate more. So he really pushed to invest some money into the business, which I was very, very reluctant about at the time. And he was like, "Look, I'm just gonna give you enough money so that you can generate the work that I need." And it was a small amount of money in the grand scheme of things. But I agreed to it, and then we went out maybe a week, 2 weeks later, and we went for a night out, supposedly celebrating the partnership. And I got to the hotel, and he'd booked a hotel room next to mine, adjoining. So I was like, not sure how I feel about this. Married guy, hadn't got any vibes before, and then a few drinks in the nightclub, and he just suddenly lurched for me in the club and kind of tried to kind of get me to kiss him. And I just kneed him really hard in the balls. And it just, it obviously from a relationship viewpoint was not great. But for me, it was, that is not the exchange here. You don't put money in and I then, and there was, there was a number of sets of circumstance like that. And whenever I speak to other women in the industry and, they relax enough to trust you, every single one of them will have a story like that. And when I step back from it, it's like, how can that even be a thing? Like that shouldn't be a thing.
It shouldn't be a thing. And you hope it's not the size that it was then now. But equally, you probably, it is still there. It's much more harder. It's much harder for a bloke to speak about it. All blokes can do is call it out when they see it. When we screen this video, we like put words on the page on the screen. We put knees in the balls, I think, like that, just in case anybody's like watching it at the gym, they'll know what we're talking about.
Yeah, they will know. Yes.
What's the hardest thing about being a founder?
What is the hardest thing about being the founder? Probably sometimes feeling like the only adult in the room. It's the kind of parental responsibility where you know that it's on you. Like there is nobody else. You know that meme where it's like I'm desperately looking around for somebody more adulty, and you realise you're the only adult. I think the responsibility of people's careers, the responsibility of the business, I think that's the hardest thing.
I've always been quite responsible, I think. I've never been reckless. It's hard to believe looking at me in my shirt and tie. But I still in my mind can think of myself as a child. I think of myself as just an immature kid, just having fun, trying to change the world with a level of innocence as well. And then you look around you and you realise you've got responsibilities, whether that's as a parent, whether that's as a husband, whether that's as a son or whatever, or a boss. And it's quite scary, that. And sometimes you have to remind yourself of that as well. And it just feel like a grown-up when you want to, in your mind, just feel like a child. What's your long-term goal, both personally and professionally?
So, for me...
I mean, obviously, appearing on this podcast was
well, this was
goal.
it. This is it. I'm done.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm done.
Your life on this, your work is done. Okay. But beyond appearing on the Naked Founder podcast, what other ambitions could you possibly have?
Yeah. So I want to exit both the UK and Australian business in the next 2 to 3 years. And what that will give me on a personal level, it will give me an unequivocal level of financial security for my wife and kids, which is important to me. It's, knowing that if anything was to happen to me, that they would be 100% okay, I think would take a lot of relief off the table. And then I want to have probably a bit more of a measured life. I've definitely had a roller coaster over the last few years, and it's been fun, but I'm getting older, and I do enjoy my health, my fitness, like spending time on things that aren't just work. So a bit more balance at some point, I think, would be agreeable. My deep passion is the idea that I could set up a fund for female entrepreneurs. I love engaging with other female founders and, where at all possible, being supportive and helping. And I genuinely believe that the country and business in general would be far better if there was more women in senior roles and founding more businesses.
I mean, the stats are really bad, which is only 2% of VC funding goes to female-founded businesses. And if female-founded businesses were to receive the same level of support as male-founded businesses, the economy would be worth an extra £250 billion a year. I mean, the numbers are staggering as well. We had a founder on the Naked Founder podcast who said that he's taken up a love of Lego. I mean, have you got a passion for jigsaws or a passion for something like that? How do you unwind?
How do I unwind? Well, the gym is like my big passion. I took up bodybuilding, not a competition. You'll be glad to know that I'm not smothering myself in oil and turning up here.
Okay. You would have misunderstood the Naked Founder podcast name. Okay.
That would have been awkward for both of us.
It was very awkward.
So yeah, I do love that. I love the simple things in life. So I go hiking with friends like once a week, and I find just being able to chat whilst walking up a hill or I did a charity check to Mont Blanc and the Pyrenees with a group of people, and that was just a magical experience. So spending time with people I love and just being physical and moving stuff around works for me. I'm not a jigsaw or a Lego kind of person. I have become a little bit obsessed with podcasts, particularly anything around biohacking or the human condition or psychology and how the brain works.
And of course, the Naked Founder podcast.
Obviously.
There's a tradition in the US where the outgoing president will write a letter to his or her successor offering advice. If you had to write a letter to you on the first day of founding a business or to another founder out there, what would you write?
I think I would definitely, and it's annoying because people said this to me at the start and I didn't listen to them, but start with the end in mind. Like is I think so key. The one thing that I believe was probably a misstep, albeit I wouldn't change a thing because I've had lots of fun and lots of adventures. But I think selling more stuff, along the way, as opposed to just carrying on building stuff and being intentional. Like I think some of the best founders I know are intuitive and they, opportunistic. And that's a fantastic quality. But if you can combine that with more clear intention as to, what you're doing, why you're doing, and where it's going to end, the combination of those two things, I think, is quite powerful.
Yeah, a lot of founders I speak to say that you should be thinking about exit from the day that you found the business. And if you're not, then you're not building your business for exit, which is really when it's at its zenith. Massive thank you, Sam, for coming in and for speaking on the Naked Founder podcast, and to our sponsor, of course, Financial, the home of money for women. That's all for this episode of the Naked Founder podcast. If you like it, please tell your friends and family to press that subscribe button. And that's all from me. As always, my name is Chris Maguire.